Hey everyone. All right, so we're back again, checking out the 3ds Max Basics for Modeling Video Game Assets Volume 1 textbook. We are going over to Chapter 4, where we're going to be 3D modeling the fixed bridge. So that would be the bridge that would lead up to the gatehouse drawbridge. Now, one of the fantastic features of this book is it's done from the point of view of a game design document. So we have great reference photos here. We've got concept art, as well as all of our metrics and the polygon budget included. Um, Now, normally the other thing about this book is they get right into showing you how to 3D model placeholder assets. Now, there's great value in placeholder assets. They allow you to 3D model something in a fraction of the time that you can hand over to the level designer for them to literally put in place while waiting for the final asset to be created. Um, but this chapter doesn't seem to actually do that. And that's because the bones of the bridge can then be more or less converted into the real bridge. Okay, so what ends up happening in this chapter is we do, in fact, have to basically start modeling the placeholder element, and then the textbook will ask us to, once that's done, you would export that asset, and then you would delete pieces, and you would go back and start adding detail to the placeholder asset, which is fine. So let's get going on chapter 4, which starts on page 59. So if we look closely here, we've got our bridge span module, which has got to have a poly count of 150. And the bridge end module has a polygon count of under 125. So that means the total bridge will be like around a couple thousand polygons by the time we add like 3 or 4 spans to the bridge, plus an end piece. Maybe not 1,000 quite, but I guess it depends on how long you decide to make the bridge, because this bridge will be modular. So in theory, you could make it as long or as short as you need to. But with that, let's get to modeling our fixed bridge, shall we? So here we are in 3ds Max. So we're going to go ahead and start. So this, again, modeling the fixed bridge in the textbook. I'm starting on page 62, and I'm just going to be following it like one page at a time, just like any other normal person would, using this textbook. So first we're going to start with a box. Anyone who knows me knows that I like to model with a green color because of the high contrast between selections and whatnot. And I also like to go over to my default shading, turn on edge faces. Okay. And now this box here is going to have a length of 1 meter, a width of 1 meter, and a height of 2.5 meters. All right, but then we also are going to need some segments this time. So we're going to be using 2 length segments, 1 width segment, and 3 height segments. Okay. Now I'm also going to turn on my move gizmo here, and I'm just going to make sure that my box is centered, and that should be the starting point of our fixed bridge. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking ahead here real quick. Okay. So we're going to select the top right polygon on the divided side of the box as shown, figure 4.7. So again, if you're following along in your textbooks, you'll see the image. With the polygon sub-object level selected, find extruded caddy to extrude a polygon of 0.75 meters twice, and then make an additional 0.25 meter extension. Okay, so translate that. First thing we're going to actually need to do is turn this into a convert to an editable poly. We're now over on our modified tab. We're going to grab our face selector 4 on our keyboard, and we're going to grab this face right here. So just like the textbook said, we're going to do 2 extrusions of 0.75 meters, and then a third final one of 0.25 meters. So I'll just go extrusion with settings. Okay, we get the caddy and 0.75. I'll hit the plus, I'll hit the plus, and the final one will be 0.25, where I will hit the check mark. And this should be the final look of that extrusion. Okay, so once again, just because I think I went a little bit quick, with that selection, extrude, settings, that first extrusion will be 0.75 meters. There it is. If I hit the plus on the bottom of the caddy, it will allow me to do a second extrusion of 0.75 meters. Perfect. So if I hit the plus, it'll allow me to do a third extrusion, except this third extrusion, we want it to be 0.25 meters. And now I'm done extruding. So I'll hit the check mark to finish extruding. Okay. So now we are going to grab with control these 4 sides here. Okay. And with these, we're going to extrude with settings once again, this time a 1 meter extrusion, and I'll just hit the check mark. Okay. Next, we are going to grab these faces here. And we're going to extrude with settings once again. This time, 0.25. Check mark again. So you may be looking at this going, how is this a bridge? Well, an efficient way to model in 3D modeling is to not model the entire thing, but rather to use symmetry whenever possible. So since a single bridge span is very similar to just like a table with 4 legs, it's more efficient for us to just model a quarter of our bridge span, and then we'll just do symmetry and then symmetry again, and it'll give us the entire bridge span. Much quicker, much more efficient. Okay. So finally, well, not finally here, but next, we're going to control select both of these faces here for a 1 meter extrusion with settings. Extrude 1 meter. Check mark. Okay. Just a small detail here. We're going to grab this front face to do an extrusion of 0.25 meters. Again, if I'm going too fast, just refer to your textbook. I'm on page 66 now. Or you can rewind and slow down the video. Okay. Now we're at the point where we're ready to do some symmetry. So if you remember from the curtain wall, in order to do symmetry, we're going to need some open edges or free edges in order for the symmetry to attach. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to select these 4 sides, these 4 faces. Okay, and just going to hit delete on my keyboard. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press 2 on my keyboard so I can switch to edge select. And I'm just going to select any one of these edges. It doesn't matter which edge you choose, as long as it's one of these edges so that the symmetry knows where to connect. When I'm ready, I'll go to my modifier list and I'll search for symmetry. I'll apply the symmetry modifier. Now, depending on the orientation for which you started modeling, you may need to play around with these mirror axes. So right now, this is not the symmetry I was looking for. So I'm going to have to switch to the Y axis. Everyone else's results may vary depending on the direction for which you've modeled. The result we're looking for is this. This is the result we want. Okay. Once you have this, we can right click inside of our modifier list and collapse all, click yes. And now we have committed to that symmetry. Now we're ready to do the next bit of symmetry, which is going to require us to press 4 on our keyboard for the polygon or face selection. And then we're going to select these faces here. Okay, and then we're going to delete to open them up so that we've got something to attach our symmetry to. I'll press 2 on my keyboard to get back to edge select, selecting the any edge where the symmetry can apply. And once again, we will search for symmetry in our modifier list, clicking on symmetry, and this should be the result we get. Again, your results may vary. You may have to play around with some of these mirror axes to get it to look right, but it should look like this when it's finished. Once you're satisfied and everything is good, we will right click and collapse all, committing to our symmetry. Okay. So a new step here, and a quick bit of a lesson from the textbook here is about the selection tools. So we've been using this marquee selection for a bit, right? And we all know that if you do a marquee selection like this, anything that touches even the edge of our marquee will become selected. So if I do face select and do like this, you can see this face got selected despite being only partially highlighted by the marquee. Okay. Now, in order to get a little bit more precise with our marquee selection, like let's say all I wanted to grab were these pillars. After doing that, I may have to go over here and hit the shrink button in order to shrink the selection to get the selection I wanted. But another method that we could use is up here on our shelf. There's these window crossing marquee selection here. So if I click this and switch it to this icon, now the way the marquee works is only faces that are 100% inside the marquee are selected. It no longer will select faces that aren't 100% inside the marquee. Okay, so this selection method will, anything that touches the marquee will be selected. This one will select only the surfaces that are 100% inside that marquee space. All right, so we're going to perform a detach. And the way we're going to do that is with this selection made. So basically just the end pieces of our bridge. We're going to scroll down inside of our tools here and we'll find a detach button. And with that detach selected, we're going to rename this the bridge end. Okay. And we'll click OK. Now, if we look in our outliner over here, we'll notice that we now have a new mesh called bridge end that we can select. So with that selected, we can separate that bridge end. Okay. So this allows for like easy expanding of this bridge, making it modular, right, as a placeholder item. Okay. So this would be the completed bridge placeholder item, which apparently mine got renamed here at some point. Let me try this again. I'm going to bridge end. And we can rename this too while we're at it to bridge span. Okay. Now you could keep this if you want and just mute the parts we don't need. So we don't need the bridge end here. We can just mute this. And we can select our bridge span. We're going to right click and clone. Okay. We are going to clone a copy. All right. we can just leave it bridge band 01 is fine. Okay, we now have a new one, and we can hide one of them. I might hide the bridge band 01. It really doesn't matter. Honestly, I would probably have just deleted them all. But it's in order to save a copy of our placeholder in case, you know, someone needed it again or what have you. Okay. So what I'm going to choose to do here for my purposes is I'm just going to delete these other pieces because I don't actually want them or need them. Okay. All right. Well, that brings us over to page 74 now. So now we need to return this back to a quad, like just a single corner / quadrant. Okay, so we're going to go into our face select. It might be beneficial here at this point to come and check out like our top-down views or left side views or whatever. So I'm just going to go into my top-down view, and I'm going to disable the wireframe by putting on the default shading and adding my edge faces. Okay, and I'm just going to select this front half and delete it. And I'm going to select this half of my bridge and delete that. Okay. I'll return my selection method back to default, which should leave me with this. All right. So now with this left, we can begin to start adding some detail to our bridge, make it a little bit more interesting. And that's going to start with our vertex select. So I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard. Okay, and I'm going to go back to this front view here. Okay, what we want to do is we want to add kind of an archway to the bottom of our fixed bridge. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to grab these first two vertices. I'm going to bring these up to about there. More almost like squaring up these three squares so that they look all three identical. And then I'm going to bring up this last group of vertices to a halfway point between this one and that one. Maybe not quite a halfway point, but like a 2/3 point up. Now, it's super important that you realize that I'm using a marquee selection here. Okay, I'm not just clicking this vertices, right? Like I could control click this vert and this vert and lift them up. But you'll notice the result that happens here. And what's happening is we've only selected the front two verts, right? And that's not what we're looking for. What we want to do is get all of these move up. So with a marquee selection, I select all of the verts that are also behind. And that's why I've switched to the front view. Because I get the orthographic view, I can go ahead like this, select all those 6 vertices, and I can lift them up like this. So it's important to keep in mind here that we're all about that marquee selection here so that we grab all of the vertices that we're trying to move. Okay. So with that, I'll lift this up just like about there. Okay. Giving a nice roll down kind of archway, which by the time we symmetry this again will look like a real nice completed arch. All right, we can go back to our perspective mode now, and we're going to come around to the back side here, and we're going to work underneath here. Okay. So what we want to do now is we're going to need to go to our face select, so 4 on our keyboard. We want to extrude out these two faces. But before we do that, like, because if we were to do this just like this, extrude them out, we would still have this face left, and that face is just going to be a problem for us ultimately. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this face and delete it. Okay. Now we're going to grab these two faces, and we're going to extrude them out 1 meter, which should match us up to the exact distance that we had there before. Okay. Now, if we look inside, we'll notice that we've got a face here that got added from the extrusion. Not a problem. It's just a small side effect, so we'll just delete that face. But that doesn't leave us 100% in the clear yet. Allow me to demonstrate. If I pull these faces down, you'll notice that we're not connected here. Okay, and it would be really nice if this mesh was complete. So what we're going to do is, well, we could do it two ways. So the way the textbook has us do it, it would be selecting these two verts, okay, and then target weld. Right, so we've done target welding now. We can select target weld, and we can grab this vert and select this vert, and it'll weld down to those verts. No problem. Done. And that's fine. That's one way to do it. But if I may, we could also just select with marquee select there and here. Okay. Because remember, there's actually two verts on top of each other there. So I want to do marquee select, make sure I grab them. And we can just use a weld, regular weld. We'll just raise that offset it just a touch. And check. Okay. And what that does is it splits the difference. So where target weld welds from point A moves to point B, regular weld splits the difference where both points move to a central point. Not always the best way. You gotta pick your weld for the right job. So for me, this regular weld is the way I would have done this, just because less steps, less clicking. Okay. Now we also aren't going to need these faces here as well, for the record. So we can delete those as well, because we will need those to be open for symmetry later. Okay. Now let's work on this post here. So if we look at our reference images, we'll see that this should have some kind of like a decorative cap on it. So we're going to grab both of these faces here. We're just going to pull them back. And we're going to do this a little bit more eyeballed. Okay, so you guys can feel free to do this to taste. Okay, but there's some great techniques to be had here. So I've just lowered this down to be a little smaller. Okay, I'm going to switch to scale. All right, my scale gizmo here is now this like pyramid shaped gizmo. And if I select in the middle, it'll scale uniformly everything. If I select just one of these lines, it will scale just in those directions. And if I select just one axis, it will scale only in that axis. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the bar that's in between X and Y, and I'm going to hold Shift as I scale in. And by doing that, I create this, what we call an inset. Okay. Now, 3ds Max has an inset tool we could have also used. Okay. But this is just another way that you could do it as well. So I'm now going to switch to move, and I'm just going to pull this up. And in pulling it up, you can see I get a nice little bevel. There's many ways to skin a cat. We could have tackled this so many different ways. This is the way I'm doing it. Okay. I'm looking to get like about a 45-degree angle on that. Okay. So now I'm going to hold Shift, and this time I'm going to extrude straight up. So Shift is the keyboard shortcut for extruding. Okay. And now that I've pulled that up a bit, maybe I'll come up just a bit more. I'm going to delete those faces. And now we're, for the first time, going to use a border selection. So that's that selection method in between edge and face or polygon here, which is border, also 3 on your keyboard. And what border does is it will select all edges that have an open face. So if I select this edge here, it'll select all of this opening, which is perfect. And now I'm going to do the same move I did earlier down below, except I'm going to extrude outward. So I'm going to hold Shift for extrude. I'm going to grab that handlebar between X and Y. and I'm just going to extrude it out. Okay, so now you can see what we're doing with the extrusion here. We're just kind of creating a really cool little shape. Okay, I'm going back to move, and my apologies if I'm going quick here, but you know, it's a video. You can slow it down or pause it or rewind. Okay, so I'm going to hold shift with my move tool on, and I'm just going to pull this up. All right, and now I'm going to pull it up one more time, like about that far. So again, while I was holding shift to do the shortcut for extrude, now I'm going back to scale. This time I'm not going to extrude, so I'm not going to hold shift, but I'm going to scale this inward. By scaling this inward, I create a point or a peak. Okay. Now I want to close this peak. So if I go to my vert select and we zoom in on this, I've got 6 vertices to tend with. I could marquee select these, or I could try to target weld this, but remember, whenever you target weld, vert A ends up moving to vert B, and we'll lose our symmetrical peak here. Instead, I'm going to marquee select all 6 of these vertices. Okay, and we're going to do weld again. So I'm going to turn weld on with settings, and again, your results may vary. You'll have to play with this threshold. So you see right now they're not welded, and if I just scroll up this threshold a little bit, you'll see they start to come together and collapse. So I'll just keep adjusting the threshold until all the vertices have collapsed together. And the result I get is a nice peak. Now, my peak's a little dramatic, so I'm just going to grab it with my move tool, and I'm just going to move it down just a hair. Oh, a hair, maybe about a half, to just make it nice like that. Okay. Now we've modeled a nice cap piece on our bridge. Okay, let's do some attention over here now, because if we remember in our reference images earlier in the chapter, there was like a medallion shield on the halfway point of the fixed bridge here. So let's get into this and model this a little bit. Okay. Some point down the line, apparently, I forgot to add some geometry to this. I don't know where I missed that. Strange. But anyways, we need more edges here. So first thing we're going to need to do is do a slice. I'm not sure how I missed it in the textbook. I was just following the textbook along. I don't remember a spot where it had me adding that extra. Oh, yeah, there it was. I totally just missed it. Not tragic. No harm, no foul. Okay, but we're going to add it now. So this is going back now to page 76, which apparently I skipped. No big deal. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to grab edge selection, and there is a feature here when we scroll down called slice plane. Now, slice plane, this button is a toggle, so when I click it, it'll turn on, and we get this yellow square. Okay, you may need to rotate or maneuver this yellow square to get it to be in the right position. Mine is thankfully already in the right position, and if we look closely at this yellow square, what it's doing to our mesh, it's projected an edge line onto it. So I can just use my move gizmo now to get this projection line into position. Okay, and this is where we want to add a new edge. Okay, and once I've placed this plane where I want it to add the edge that I like, I can click on slice. Okay, and I can turn off the slice plane. And if we look, I now have a nice new edge that I can use. All right, so now we can move forward with our face selector 4 on our keyboard. I'm going to select both of these faces. Okay. and I'm going to extrude this out. 0.1, according to our book. All right, there we go. Just adding a little detail to this. Now we can work on the decorative ornament shield. This is also a little bit kind of however you feel like you want to do it to get it done. Will be fine. Okay. So what I would do here is grab these 4 faces. Actually, no. We should go to the front view here, and we're going to do the vertices select, and I'm going to grab these 2 verts. Remember, marquee select. Pull this back. I'm going to grab this pile of verts. Pull this back like this. I'm going to grab this bottom one. Pull this down. And that'll give me about the shape that I'm looking for. Okay, remember, doing this, you do the marquee selection so that you can grab all of the vertices that you needed. Okay. Now I'll do 4 on my keyboard for the polygon selection. I'll grab these 4 polygons. We're going to extrude them by 0.15, just a little bit beyond the extrusion that we did here. Now, I'd just like to point out something here that textbook doesn't address. That's a minor kind of like imperfection. If I pull these faces over here and we look carefully, you'll see we've got 2 faces interlocking, and that could cause some Z fighting. So in the interest of following the textbook, I'm just going to leave it. But personally, I would fix that. So if we look on the inside, you'll see that we've got Z fighting edges here. I would address this and fix them, but I'm just trying to go according to the textbook. So for now, I'll leave it be. Okay. Yeah, let's go up here, and what we're going to do is we are going to grab this face and this face and this face and delete them. Okay, because we want this medallion piece to kind of stick out a little bit. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an edge selection. And I'm going to grab this edge. I'm going to hold shift to get an extrude. I'm just going to pull on the X. I'm going to stop about there. So you see I was able to add a face just by pressing shift and doing extrude of an edge. I was able to pull out a face by extruding an edge, which is really, really handy. I'm now going to go to my vertices select, and we're going to turn on our target weld. And I'm going to weld to that vert and this vert to that vert to reclose that up. Okay. And now if I grab if I do a similar move over here, or if I grab this edge and hold shift, I can bring it over this way, not all the way. I'll press 1 on my keyboard for vertices select, turning on target weld again, and we'll target weld that to there, that to there, closing it all back up. Okay. All right, so we're about ready to do some symmetry, but first we need to check our edges. So if we look at our medallion, it won't symmetry properly with these faces here, so we'll grab those and delete that. Everything else should be in good shape, ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my edge selection, so 2 on my keyboard. I'm going to grab the edge to which I want the symmetry to take place. And again, we'll go into our modifier list. We'll search for symmetry. And again, everyone's results will vary. This is clearly not the result that I wanted. So we'll try some different axes. So that's not right either. We can try Z. Well, that's not right either, right? So we can go to X and try flipping. Well, that's not right either, right? So we just keep trying until we get it. So for me, Y and flip is the result that I wanted. Y with a flip. Okay, and this is what I was looking to do. All right, so with that, I can right click, collapse all, click on yes. And now the fixed bridge symmetry committed. Okay, and then we're going to do it one more time. So edge select or 2 on my keyboard. I'll select that edge over here. Modifier list, search for symmetry, apply symmetry. Again, playing around with the mirror axes until I get this result. Okay. And when I'm happy, I'll right click, collapse all, finished. All right. So at this point, we've done all of the things that you pretty much need to know about how to make this fixed bridge. The next couple steps are one, to detach the one end over here, right, to create it, to make it truly modular, and then to model this end piece to accept the drawbridge. So when we do the gatehouse, the drawbridge will come down to meet this fixed bridge, and there needs to be like a ledge done up here to accept the drawbridge. So at this point, I would have you guys go forward to tackle that yourself, which means I have taken you up to figure 4.55 on page 96, and I would ask you to complete the model on your own. It shouldn't be too hard and fairly trivial at this stage. Okay. And the chapter 4 exercise at the end of the chapter is to create a wall torch. So I would also ask for you guys to take up the torch and accept the challenge of creating your own wall torch. All right. And that, my friends, is modeling the fixed bridge from the 3ds Max Basics for Modeling Video Game Assets Volume 1. Stick around and subscribe for the next bunch of videos. All right. Thank you.